Welcome to the first Sunday of 2025. You guys excited? Generally, this is a time of year people, they make goals and, routines and resolutions, whatever you want to call them. And generally, people are doing these for good habits, good things that they want to implement into their life, right? People aren't making, routines and wanting to build habits on becoming a smoker or, gaining weight, right? These are generally good things. However, it's important that we don't lose sight of the ultimate mission at hand. How many people know that we all have a mission to accomplish while here on earth? In the military, a lot of times when you do a mission, there will be a priority placed on that mission. This could look at time as priority. An example of this is insert time on target this time, wreak as much havoc as you can, and be off target by this time. Another example is mission has priority, which essentially is do whatever it takes to accomplish the mission. And that's what the title of this morning's message is going to be, is mission has priority. Jesus tasked his disciples with a mission in Matthew 28. I'm going to start reading in verse 19. Jesus was speaking to his disciples. He says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So notice first, Jesus is talking to men who have already undergone a discipleship process. Okay? They are disciples. And now he tasks them with a mission of making more. Essentially, he says, go bear fruit. The Webster Dictionary defines commission as an instruction, command, or duty given. So he commands them with this task, right? And then he says an interesting phrase. He says, "And lo, I am with you always." Pay attention to the fact that he doesn't say anything about whether it will be easy or not. But in my personal experience of life and serving God, it's generally been associated with a high degree of suffering. But the ironic thing is that the suffering is always worth it. What I'm not talking about is the consequences of our own stupid decisions. What I'm talking about specifically today is suffering for obeying God. Persecution. We have a sign on the wall right here. It says, "Every believer, a disciple maker." We all have the same mission, to bear fruit, to make disciples. However, before we have to go through a discipleship process. So this morning, I want to have a conversation of what this might look like, because the mission, although is the same for both you and I, how we go about it is just going to be different. We all have different gifts, different abilities. We're in different fields of work. And so how I go about the same mission as you do will look differently, and the same vice versa. We're going to break this down into 3 different phases: the call, the training, and the mission. Phase 1, the call. This generally will look like an opportunity where God presents a mission that is specifically tailored to you. In Luke 2, verse 49, Mary and Joseph, they're looking for Jesus, and they come and they find him teaching the temple. And Jesus, he looks up at them and he says, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know I must be about my Father's business?" You see how confident Jesus was as a young man in the mission on his life? Now let's look at the story of the rich young ruler in Mark 10. This man, he comes to Jesus and he says, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus, he goes through this list of all these things, these commands. And the guy's like, "I've done all that. Look at what I've done," essentially. And then Jesus saves this one thing for last. He says, "Sell everything you have and follow me." And he goes away sorrowful because he couldn't do it. Actually, he could. He just chose not to. I wonder, what did this guy miss out on by not taking hold of that opportunity? Because in the verse, it says that he would have his reward in heaven. Maybe not on earth. Look at how a lot of the lives of the disciples ended. But the thing is, what if he did give up this? Because it's not like the guy had nothing going for him. He seemed like a pretty successful dude, at least monetarily, right? There was sacrifice required. But ultimately, when Jesus presented this opportunity to him, he chose to reject it. You see how confident that Jesus was in the call in his life. God is presenting some of us opportunities, but we're saying no because we're afraid to go through the process of pain.
Yeah. So good.
You see, the mission is to bear fruit, but what opportunity is God presenting to you in the Father's business? I can think of a time in my life that was a very pivotal moment where I really believe God called me to do something very specific. But I had the opportunity to say no when I hit resistance. I was in high school. I just moved from Tri-Cities down to Tennessee. I believe I was 17. And all I wanted to do was graduate school and move back to Tri-Cities and be a hunting and fishing guide. Great plan, hunt and fish the rest of my life, not worry about anything else. And so it's lunchtime. I'm in the chow hall. The cafeteria, bell rings for us to go back to class. And there's this Marine Corps recruiter with his little table set up and his trinkets. And he's standing there in his dress blues and he's all yoked and tattoos and no one's talking to him. And I catch his eye, he catches my eye and he does one of these and I'm like, no. And he's like, hey kid, come here. I'm like, no man, that's not for me. I had zero desire to join the military, by the way. He's like, hey, kid, come here. I keep walking away. I'm like, no, man, that's not for me. And then he's like, no, you come here now. Literally, the hallway stops. I'm like, okay. This guy's going to chase me down. I don't know what he's going to do. So I go up to him, and I'm like, I'm getting frustrated because he's poking holes in my plan. And I thought I had it all figured out. And what's even more frustrating is it's not like he's even trying to recruit me. He's just making me realize my plan is trash. And so I am a Christian at the time. I go home after that encounter, and I'm about to get into the Word. This exact Bible right here. It's covered in duct tape. I was a kid. Give me a break. And right before getting into it, I pray this prayer. I say, God, if this is something that you want me to do, give me the desire to do it because I just don't have it right now. Nothing elaborate, just a simple and honest prayer. I was reading Philippians at the time, and I get to chapter 2, verse 13, and a picture of the exact verse should be behind me. This is exactly what I'm looking at. For God is working in you, giving you the desire to obey him and the power to do what pleases him. And I said, okay, I shut that Bible. And from that moment, my heart shifted. My desire shifted. And I was equipped with the power to do what God was calling me to do because I said yes. It took me 2 years. I got denied 3 times from the military. I got told I would never be able to join any branch of service. I got mocked. I got laughed out of a recruiter's office. They said, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm still going to join. I'll move to the West Coast, I was confident. And in these 2 years, so all I wanted to do was be a special operator. I had zero interest in anything else in the military. But I couldn't even get in the military, let alone a top secret clearance. So I met with all this resistance, all this rejection. No, everyone telling me no. So I have all the voices and the people that I can see here. My own friends and family told me, well, no one even makes it special operations anyways. How are you, And so I'm hearing all this doubt. But in my spirit, I knew that this is something that God called me to do. Throughout the time of those 2 years, while I was going through the process trying to get in, I was training, I was preparing. I was running, swimming, lifting, rucking, preparing and working on a farm until eventually I got a call and I got to go. There was, right before I graduated high school, they gave us this sheet of paper and they said, write where you see yourself in 10 years. And on that paper, I wrote verbatim, in 10 years, I will be a scout sniper in Marine Special Operations Command as a raider. And I remember 10 years later, I look back, that's exactly where I was to the T. And God gave me so many other words throughout this process of grinding and just like, what am I even holding on to other than just his word? And he gave me so many other words. 2 Timothy 2:10 is the verse I stood on my whole time in the military, which was 10 years. And it said, "For I am willing to endure anything as long as it will bring salvation and eternal glory to those Christ has chosen." So during this process, he made it very clear to me, this is gonna be tough. There is gonna be a lot of suffering involved. However, there are dudes that I want to bring you to, that I want to use you to go and to speak into their life. If nothing else, to be there for them. When I was there in the teams, I wasn't preaching to all my friends. I was living it. I was doing my best, right? And so this was part of this process. See, God will often call you by presenting an opportunity to you, but the choice is yours to accept that mission or to quit before the training even starts. Esther 4:14. "For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" God is presenting some of you opportunities, but you're saying no because you're afraid to go through the process of pain. If you want to go on a wild ride, say yes to God. If you want a boring life, stay complacent and stay comfortable. He will find somebody else. The reason is because your no is somebody else's yes. Me standing here right now is only because I've said yes to God's call. And I'm not talking about on the stage. I'm not talking about the military. I'm talking about daily laying down your cross and serving God. This adoration to the King. This posture of reverence. The mission is specifically tailored to you. 1 Samuel 15:22. "So Samuel said, 'Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice.'" A lot of times we want to compare our lives to other people, but we don't know, their level of obedience. It can be easy to judge people from what we see. But we have no right to complain about the lack of God's blessings or unanswered prayers if we're not willing to be obedient to what he's already asked us to do. It's just like voting. Don't vote, don't complain. Don't be jealous of somebody else's blessings if you're not willing to put in the work yourself. Because oftentimes all we see is the end result. Their Instagram life, their highlight reel, the things that are out there for us to see. You didn't see the road of suffering that they went through to get to where they're at. The road of crushing. It can be easy to want recognition in public for battles that we never fight in private. A lot of people want a platform, but they're not willing to count the cost to be truly effective. I'm talking about being real, being genuine. Where are you actually at? Every person sitting here and hearing this is for a reason. As long as you have breath in your lungs, you have a mission to accomplish. And the mission is to bear fruit. John 15:16. "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should bear fruit and that your fruit should remain. That whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you." He chose you and he appointed you to bear fruit. The curveball is we all have our own free will, because when you reject suffering, oftentimes you're really rejecting blessing. Look at what the rich young ruler was presented with. Ultimately, he chose to reject it. So let me ask you, church, are you about the Father's business? That brings us to phase 2, the training. If you are about the Father's business, then you'll be willing to go through the process. And the process is discipleship. Discipleship is the training grounds. There's a phrase, train like you fight. When I'm training for a mission, I'm not dropping weight. I'm not I'm training exactly as much as I can possibly for how the mission is actually going to go. Why? Because I want to be prepared for the real thing. I don't want to cut corners in training and then expect I'm just going to rise to the occasion all of a sudden. In sports, they have a similar saying, practice like you play. Training is to prepare you for the fight, so expect it to be difficult. How many people know that there's standards in training? Luke 3:9, every tree that does not produce good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Training is for pruning. You see, there's a lot of things that need to be weeded out during the discipleship process. Many come to mind, but one of them is compromise, because it leads to drop standards and quitting. If you accept God's call, quitting, it's not an option. It's a continuous mission until the day you die. In compromise, it's the killer of reverence. Every time that you compromise, it's easier to compromise and just down and down and down. Remember, mission has priority. It's not about your comfort level. In Proverbs, it says, he who fails in the day of adversity has little strength. Training, it straight up demolishes your comfort zone. It's this posture of reverence of, God, no matter what you ask me, I am down. No matter what it is, I am willing. Job 13:15, though he slay me, yet I will trust him. No matter what happens, I will trust him. And a lot of people, they focus on that first half, but the second half says, but I will still make my request known to you. Although this is tough, although I don't understand this, I will still trust you through it. And it's almost like he's saying, I'm still going to complain. I'm still going to voice my opinion, right? And it's this sense of, I'm going to be real, right? I'm not going to pretend nothing's wrong. This is tough, right? But still, through that process, God, you are good. I trust you. I praise you. Nevertheless, I will serve you. In spite of what he wanted, he still served with obedience. How many people know that you have instructors in training? When I was going through assessment and selection to be a special operator, we started with about 240 some dudes in my selection class. And by the end of it, we ended with about 40 and of guys who either didn't quit or didn't get dropped. And how many people know that the instructors throughout that process, they weren't dropping the standard for anyone so that more people could make it, right? And also this selection was only to start training. It was just like, this is all this is literally the starting point once you get to the end of that. And so the reason that they weren't dropping the standard is because a couple reasons. One, these instructors just came from teams. They have been through everything that I was trying to go through. Okay, they understood what was required of these missions. And so everything that I wanted to do, the standard is here. If I don't make it, I don't have what's required to go to his team. Also, he's picking his replacement. And when he leaves his team, there's an opening. Now he's picking a guy to go replace and cover the back of his brothers. And so these standards, they're for protection. When your mentor reaches out to you, holds you accountable, says, hey man, where you at? You ain't been to life group in a while. Hey, how are you doing in this area? How are you treating your wife? Are you dating her? This, that, the other. That's for protection. It's out of love. If they didn't care, you probably just wouldn't hear from them. And biblically, they're snatching you out of the fire and saving your soul from death. Your heavenly Father is the same way. He's a good and gracious Father. He knows everything. He will be with you through the process. At Hungry Gen, the process of discipleship, we have a lot of resources, a lot of tools to help. We have life class. You can come and you learn so much and you get built up. There's the retreat, destiny training, and also life groups, getting plugged in. If you're not plugged into a life group, don't leave here until you're plugged into a life group. Because before you can disciple others, you first must be discipled. You want to know one of the main differences between Tier 1 special operators and a lot of the rest of the military? It's their humility to ask questions. Why? Because nobody wants the dude on their team that knows it all. Because he has a limitation to how much he can learn and how far he can really go. But when you're humble enough to receive correction from a mentor, from someone that's teaching, that's there to protect you and to raise you up, really your only limitation is your own willingness and obedience. One of the greatest predictors in these selections of whether a candidate will get selected or not are data points on whether they are teachable and trainable. And that goes along with that humility, because if you come here and they train you and they equip you and you show progression, that who knows how far you can go. I'll never forget something that one of my team chiefs said. We were training in the shoot house. The shoot house is think of a ballistic house that's with bulletproof walls, and all the walls are on sliders, and you can rearrange the rooms and the hallways. And the purpose of this is you go in and you shoot live rounds at targets in close proximity with your team, and it trains you for direct action combat and close quarters battle. And so it's to be taken with the utmost seriousness. And this is the one place that you don't goof around because it's so dangerous, right? And so we're training, we're in the shoot house, and there's a couple guys off to the side goofing off. And my team chief, he hears it and he goes over there and he says, "Some of you just need to see your buddy taken out in a body bag." And I was like, dang. And that has always stuck with me because it reveals the monotony of training. You see, a lot of people, they get so training focused that they lose sight of the battle they were called to fight. Complacency, it kills. Do we not think that our enemy is training, that our enemy is scheming, studying you? People throw around the term spiritual warfare. This is the reality. We cannot take the season of discipleship for granted. Why? Because your mission is coming. Phase 3, the mission. So this is what you train for. In the training phase, it's so vital because it prepares you for when the element of danger is introduced. Missions, they're not safe. They require stepping out and applying your training. Some of us, it's time to start a life group. Time to step out of your comfort zone. Here is out of my comfort zone, but I'm being obedient. Some of us, it's time to lead by example. Show up on time. Actually, show up early. Take notes. Be a leader. Serve. I challenge you to get plugged in. A lot of times it can be easy that once you get through the training and it's like, okay, I'm a life group leader. I've arrived. I've made it. Well, let me remind you in love, we have never arrived. Okay? We're all humans. We're all broken. We all have challenges. We all need help. And the thing is, it can be so easy you've done all this really difficult training and now you're at the mission and you want to just kind of take a pause and rest. No, the reason the training was so difficult is because the mission is not easy. Okay? And so if you get to the mission and you just want to start dropping your pack, it's not going to work. You know, there was this time in real life, we were on a mission overseas. My team, it was nighttime. We inserted on top of this mountain in a helo, and it was wintertime up there, and the terrain is brutal. It's these crazy mountains, and it's made up of all these massive boulders, some the size of this building, a shed, a house, a car, massive boulders. And it's winter, and they're all smooth, and they're all frosted over and slippery. And it's like you're sliding more than walking. And I'm the point man, I'm walking, and I'm up on a boulder that's probably 10, 12, 15 feet, and I have probably 80 pounds of gear on, and I slip. And this is, by the way, about an hour into the mission. And I slip and I fall on my leg, and something cracked. And I couldn't even stand up. And my buddies are waiting on me to lead the patrol. But guess what? None of my buddies came up and were like, John, are you okay? Do we need to carry you or anything like that? They checked on me on the radio, but what I really appreciated is they let me figure it out because they trusted me. And the thing is, when I looked around at my buddies on those missions, we had gone through training together and they were still there standing with me at the end. They weren't going to quit on me. And so we trusted each other and they allowed me. You see, the movement, even in the mission, was so difficult, but we hadn't even really started fighting yet, okay? If you give up just on your way, you'll never get to the battle you were called to fight. Some of us were giving up before we're even in the fight, and this can be a sign that we didn't go through the proper training. John 4:35 talks about the harvest being ready. There's people out there that are waiting for us. Hebrews 5:7-8. In the days of his flesh, he offered up both prayers and supplications with loud crying and tears to the one able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his piety. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from the things which he suffered. It's interesting how this encounter happened in a garden. You know, I picture Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, you know, a place where things are planted. God has something he wants to plant in you. Will you be good soil to receive it? Another word for piety is reverence. He was heard because of his reverence, this adoration for the king, this deep respect and honor for God. And then it says he learned obedience through what he suffered. We've been talking about obedience. It's synonymous with suffering. Obedience was learned through a process of suffering. I don't mean to scare you away. I mean to be honest. Because his mission is the best mission for you. I share my story with you because it was hard, but I really loved it. You know, I'm so happy with where God has brought me in life. And when I look around this room, these are the people I'm serving with now. You know? Reliance upon God, it's not a season, it's a constant. Your need for him will remain the same regardless of what you face. Look at how a lot of the disciples' lives ended. My desire is to shaken the body of Christ right now. Biblically, the disciples, their lives did not end in an easy manner. Many of them were crucified, stoned, beheaded. But this is reverence. Nevertheless, Lord, I will serve you. What is God presenting to you? Is there something that you feel that he's placing on your heart?